2021 meeting to order. Jim, can you read the language from the governor about why we're doing this on Zoom?
Yeah, absolutely. It's pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, and March 15, 2020 orders imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting will be via the Zoom online option. All information and instructions are at the end of the agenda. Bill, you're muted.
Our first item is a continued public hearing on Red Mill Definitive Plan. Can you bring us up to date, Jim?
Absolutely. So at the last meeting, we were waiting on revisions to the plan. As you guys know, in your packet, you have those revisions to the plan set. In addition, you have the peer review responses to those revisions. And both the applicant is here. I see Mark Allen and Mike Dryden from the applicant, as well as Frank DiPietro, our peer review engineer, who is present as well, if you have any questions for him. Ultimately, as you guys will probably see, there were some, a lot of narrative in terms of relation to wetland location and the drainage basins. The conservation had a rather robust conversation about that last night. And I understand there is some more details coming from DEP. However, in relation to the planning board, you know, the plan set is about 99% kind of locked in place now. Great, since you guys have, you know, really been evaluating this for about 6-7 months. And really where it takes place now is looking at that drainage basin and seeing if it needs to shift, you know, a handful of feet to the left or the right, depending on the interpretation from the Conservation Commission. So we're still waiting on that interpretation. My understanding is the commission and the applicant's going to be working through that detail along with our peer review engineer over the next month, and they continued that hearing until June 9th. So I believe the applicant's here and is certainly able to give you guys a quick walkthrough of any updates that have taken place over the past month.
Thank you very much, Jim. Mark Allen with Allen Engineering here with Mike Dryden as well. Very well recapped, Jim. Thank you for that. Literally since the last time we met, like we have given a 61 sheet revised set of plans. Frank and BSC Group have begun their review of that project. A lot of information is Conservation Commission related, and we got through, I think, the biggest hurdles last night, and we just need to sort of cross our I's and dot our T's and make sure we're all on the same page as how the setbacks have been interpreted in Bellingham and in Central Mass Regional Office at DEP. So we did get a really good email late today. I think we may have forwarded it to Jim and to Frank, but we got a good report from Judy Schmidt as far as how she's been interpreting over the years. So I think, you know, notwithstanding any questions from the board tonight, we will obviously be looking for a continuance to probably the June 10th meeting.
Jim, besides the conservation issues, do we have anything outstanding that we need to address? Frank, do you feel comfortable?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a couple of items. So one item, I think, and I may be wrong on this, but there was a waiver request for the 3-to-1 slopes in the basins. I'm not sure that the board has acted on that one.
Right, so the board has discussed each of the waivers, and historically, the board has, you know, not formally adopted any of the waivers until decision time. I believe that's where we left it at the last meeting. I know, Frank, you weren't present at the last meeting, so but I believe the waivers have been discussed and determined at this point.
And again, I think it came up a little bit last night. There are a couple of items that Mark and Michael are looking at. I think they're relatively minor items that could be addressed with revisions, and I don't see any issues with that. The only item I'll say is depending on how the discussion comes with the conservation, there may be changes to, again, the detention basins and stuff like that.
Do any board members have any questions right now regarding Red Mill? Dennis? I think you're still muted.
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Brian?
No, I don't have any specific questions. I assume, Jim, that we're going to see a more complete, or perhaps this will be the complete final plan next
Phil?
meeting.
Yeah, so exactly. So with basically where it lies now is potentially this could be that final plan, depending on the interpretation from conservation. If the conservation wants them to tweak the basin, that will involve some shifting of those basins, and then obviously our engineer will take another review of the stormwater analysis to confirm that it's still in compliance. And that should all take place between now and the June meeting. I would say the early June meeting.
Phil, do you have any questions?
No, let's see what the other board does and regroup after that.
Liz?
I have no questions at this time.
Robert?
I have no questions at this time either. Thank you.
Is anyone here from the public on Red Mill now? Frank, from a time frame, I assume you'll have some information prior to June 9th to look at?
Yes, so my understanding that based on what happened yesterday at the Conservation Commission and I got the DEP comment, I haven't really looked at it, Mark, sorry, I just got it late this afternoon, that there's going to be a response to the comments we raised in our letter from Allen Engineering. We'll respond to that in advance of the June 9th hearing. There'll be a letter that will be basically sent to both, in my opinion, Conservation and Planning Board. And that's what we're shooting to get out by the end of this month, if not before.
Okay. So Jim, based on not hearing comments from the public, the presentation
Question.
and Frank, and what we heard from the board, things are looking very positive on this, correct?
Yeah, at this time it is looking positive. I do see someone from the public, Mr. Rhodes, who may have had a question.
Yes, sir. Thank you
Mr.
very
Rhodes,
much.
go ahead and insert your hand. I apologize.
That's okay. I had quite a few questions. I don't think you have the time for all these questions. I'm going to propose them over to Brian and then see where they go from there. But one of the things that I noticed is that already 3 of the detention basins.
Charles, you're talking about the wrong project.
I was one. Yeah, we're talking about the Red Mill Estates, which is the center of town. I'm sorry.
All right, apologize.
No
It's all
problem.
right, sir.
We'll be to that. That's our next topic, though.
All right, standing by.
So Mark, I think this is going down a positive track right now. And if we can clean things up by the 9th, we should be able to get closer to a conclusion.
Fantastic. That'd be much appreciated. I think we're at the 2-yard line, so I think we're going to punch it through.
Okay. I hope it's like that and not the Seattle game. But that's good.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Frank, thank you.
You're very welcome.
So
The next item, Jim, you want to read the public notice?
just a minute.
Brook Townhouse Development, Special Residential Use.
Before we move on to that, Bill, could we get a formal motion to continue to June 10th, please, at 7 p.m.?
I'd like to have a motion on the floor to continue to June 10th at 7 p.m.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
second. We have a second on the floor to move the public hearing to June 10th. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? That motion passes unanimously. It will be discussed at the June 10th meeting. And Jim, I don't think we need to change any other dates, correct?
That's correct. No, we're in good shape.
Okay. Moving on to the public hearing. This is the first public meeting to Bundaybrook Townhouse Development, Special Residential Use. I want to stress again, this is the first time this board as a group have discussed this, and the plans have been provided to us earlier this week. Jim, can you give us an overview?
Yeah, so I'll quickly read the public hearing notice. In accordance with the Town of Bellingham zoning bylaws, Section 240-101, Special Residential Use Townhouse Dwellings, Section 240-16, Development Plan Approval, 240-54, Stormwater Management. The planning board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 13, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Arcade Meeting Room, Municipal Center, as well as utilizing the virtual meeting option found on the Town of Bellingham website, bellinghamma.org. The general public may participate by utilizing the virtual meeting option found on the Town of Bellingham's website, bellinghamma.org. The applicant, Elite Home Builders LLC, and owner TRG Family Ltd Partnership, proposed to construct 110 townhouse dwellings with associated improvements at 30 Locust Street, Bellingham, Mass. Approximately 57 plus or minus acres of land, shown on Assessors Map 9322, zoned agricultural and suburban. The plans were prepared by Land Design Collaborative, 45 Lyman Street, Westboro, Mass. 01581. The application and plans may be viewed at the Planning and Zoning Office or Town Clerk's Office in the Municipal Center, 10 Mechanic Street, Bellingham, Mass. During regular municipal business hours. For questions, please contact the town planner.
Jim, do I need a public, do I need a motion up on the,
Yes, please. Motion open
So
here.
moved.
Second.
do I have a second? We have a motion up on the public hearing. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor of opening the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? That motion passes unanimously. I'd like to turn the board over to the applicant. The meeting over to the applicant.
Okay.
So James, real quick before you start here, Mr. Chairman, if I may just, I know we have a lot of new faces in the public. I just wanted to run through the process real quick. I know
Thank
I
you.
appreciate everyone jumping online. You know, it's a unique time and we're doing unique things. I will stress, as the chairman stressed, this is the very first meeting. You know, this will be a process certainly, and this won't be the only meeting. And, you know, potentially there is an opportunity to move into a different space, whether that's in person or not. For tonight though, it's, you know, it's going to be just like we're in the meeting room. So the applicant will be presenting to the board. I know a lot of you guys saw the Conservation Commission last night, so very similar makeup. The applicant will present to the board. The board will maybe have some questions back and forth with the applicant. Again, just kind of a high level overview for everyone's sake. Then very likely the board will open it up to the public for any general questions. Again, a lot of this is kind of fact finding and understanding concerns. And then, you know, the board, myself, the applicant, are all going to be going back and taking in those comments and understanding them and see how those plans change, as well as very likely site walk will be established and other things. So that's just, I just wanted to give the general process, and please, when it becomes public participation time, if you don't mind, just please either raising your the hand physically on the camera, and I'll be looking around for people, or there is a little option over to the side here for participants to raise your hand. That way we can try and keep it a little bit in order here. And when the chairman does call on you, you know, please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Jim, I'd like to follow up with one more point. If your question has been asked, please don't repeat the same question. We want to make this as thorough as possible with the questions and answers. And we have found out in the past meetings on various developments, the same question keeps getting asked. It will keep getting answered in the same manner. So to make it more efficient and effective, you could just ask, you know, the questions you want to ask unless they've already been asked. I think that's a fair request. And I'd like to turn it over to James.
Great. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the planning board. First of all, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. So again, my name is Jim Almonte. I am a principal with Land Design Collaborative and registered landscape architect. With us tonight, we have Mike Scott, who is a principal at Land Design Collaborative as well. He is a professional engineer on the project. And I believe Steve Vinacasa from Elite Home Builders should be on the call as well. He is the applicant. So we are seeking a special permit, development plan approval, and stormwater permit for the special residential townhome provision in the bylaw for the property located at 30 Locust Street. And it's a 57-acre property currently operational as a 9-hole golf course known as Bungay Brook Golf Club. There's also parking for about 130 parking spaces. And Jim, can I share my screen so I can kind of walk you through the plans? That's okay?
Yep, you should be all set.
Okay. Can you guys see that?
Sure,
Okay.
if you want to, you can remove us from the screen to make it bigger.
Yeah, does that work? Can you see that? Okay, so this is basically the existing conditions plan. To get everybody oriented, this is Locust Street located off to the west here. North is straight up the page. So the abutters to the property, to the north, we have Jenks Reservoir and single family residential. To the west, I'm sorry, to the east, we have, again, single family residential on the opposite side of Locust Street, and the Rentham town line is basically right along the property line. To the south is Bungay Brook, which is a perennial stream. And beyond that are residents located off of Rentham Road. To the west are residents off of Squire Lane and Reservoir Drive. So the project or the site is accessed through its frontage on Locust Street. It's located in the suburban residential or suburban zoning district, with a small portion of the site in the northwest corner located in the agricultural district. It's also located in the water resource overlay district. Again, there are bordering vegetated wetlands located along the northern and southern property line. To the south is Bungay Brook. Again, it is a perennial stream. It's located off the property, but it does project a riverfront area onto the site. There is also the 100-year flood zones located to the north and south, just off the property line. There is no natural heritage jurisdiction on the property, and the soils are basically all sand to a depth of about 25 feet or so. We recently did soils borings out there about a month or so ago, and it did show sand to a depth of about 25 feet or so. There's also a couple of monitoring wells located along the westerly property line that show depth to groundwater at about 26 to 28.5 feet deep. So the site is generally flat. The highest point of the site is located at the entrance at Locust Street at about elevation 235. And then the low points are along the northern and southerly property lines at about elevation 195. The site contains a bunch of rolling berms that you would typically see in a golf course. So they're man-made berms with depressions that were constructed when the golf course was constructed. Currently, wastewater for the existing clubhouse, which is located here, for a single-family residential house, which is located here, and a maintenance facility located here, are all on individual wastewater disposal systems. Potable water for the facilities are serviced by municipal water. So that is basically the existing conditions. And what we are proposing, can everyone see the rendering on the screen now? Yep, okay. So what we are proposing is a townhome development of 110 units. The density is based off the calculations provided in the bylaw. These are 2-bedroom units located in 36 buildings. 34 of the buildings are triplex units, and 2 of the buildings located here are 4-unit buildings. It's access is going to be in the same location as is today, where the site is accessed from the parking lot. We're proposing to provide a boulevard entrance with two 18-foot wide travel lanes separated by a 10-foot wide landscape median, which will provide a nice approach to the site. The edges will be landscaped with a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees, along with some flowering shrubs and perennials. And we are proposing to maintain the existing pond, which will, again, provide a welcoming arrival to the site. The access drive, once you get beyond the boulevard entrance, we are proposing two 11-foot wide travel lanes with a 5-foot wide bicycle walking lane in lieu of traditional sidewalks. We feel that this is a better option for a number of reasons. The bike path or the bike lane will be clearly marked and will better service the community from a safety standpoint, and the fact that it will be plowed in the winter when typically your traditional sidewalks are covered in snow. So that is what we are proposing for the main access drive, which is shown here, which is just about 2,300 linear feet of road. So off of that main access drive, we are proposing, I believe we have 12 buildings that will be located off of cul-de-sacs, 4 different cul-de-sacs shown here, 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 and here. These cul-de-sacs will have pavement width of 22 feet with an 80-foot diameter turnaround. We also have a 20-foot wide emergency vehicle access out to Reservoir Drive, which is about 700 linear feet. Parking for the units, each unit has a 2-car garage, and there will be room in the driveway for 2 vehicles. The driveway length is a minimum of 24 feet long, so more than adequate room for 1 vehicle side by side. We also are proposing to maintain 21 parking spaces in the existing parking lot, but most of that pavement of the existing parking lot will be removed, and I believe it's about 20 or 30 feet from Reservoir or from Locust Street now. We're proposing to pull it back about 70 feet from the road and buffer that with some landscaping. Again, a mix of some deciduous and evergreen trees. And parking for the clubhouse, the spaces are 9 by 18 with 24-foot aisles. We also have a common mailbox area at the approach to the site along the entrance for vehicles to pull off and gather their mail. It'll be a community mailbox. So in addition to the bicycle walking lane, we are also proposing to repurpose a lot of the existing golf cart paths and repurpose them into walking trails. And areas where we aren't able to maintain them, we are going to provide new trails to kind of complete the network of trails. And when all is said and done, there'll be about 1.75 miles of walking trails throughout the site. And they'll provide access to a community green, which is centrally located in the middle of the site. Access to that will be in these locations and will tie into the walking trails throughout the site. Access to the common green will have tree-lined pathways to a common area where people can gather and sit and just basically do whatever they want. The community could have events here if they see fit. The trails will also provide access to a dog park located in the southern portion of the site, located here. I think that's the fifth green. So basically just looking to fence in that area and provide a dog park for the homeowners. Landscaping will be provided as shown on the plans. We have a full set of landscape plans with all the plant material specified. In addition to the landscaping at the front of the site, the access drives will be lined with street trees. And we're proposing a heavy buffer of evergreen trees along the westerly property line for the residents at Squire Lane and Reservoir Drive. So when we laid out this project, this development, we made a conscious effort to minimize the impacts to the site, to the buffer zones, to the resource areas, and to the woodland edges, and to maximize the distance from the residents from Squire Lane. So what's required is a 100-foot perimeter buffer for this type of development. The closest unit to Squire Lane is more than 300 feet away. So we have a buffer more than 3 times what's required. And we are maintaining about 80% open space post-development. Site lighting, we provided a photometrics plan as part of the submission. The light fixtures will be full cutoff, dark sky compliant, and we're providing lighting in critical areas along the access drive, in the parking lot that we are maintaining, and along the intersections of the roadways. Stormwater is comprised of lid practices as well as catch basin to manhole system, piped collection and conveyance system. Each storm drain system flows to an infiltration basin. These are basically very shallow detention basins that are shown in these darker areas located throughout the site. As I mentioned, the site is basically all sand. So we don't anticipate a lot of standing water here. So all stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces is pre-treated and retained and infiltrated on site. And obviously we provided a stormwater management report as part of the submission as well. So wastewater is currently being designed to be a private on-site wastewater treatment facility. So all of the units flow by gravity to a pump station located along the emergency vehicle access, which is pumped by force main to a treatment facility located here, and then to a disposal system located in the southern portion of the site, located outside the 200-foot riverfront area and outside the 100-foot wetland buffer zone as well. So the applicant is currently looking at an alternative design to wastewater, which would be basically the same thing to the interior portion of the site where all the units would flow by gravity to a pump station. But from that point, it would be pumped down the remainder of the emergency vehicle access through Reservoir Drive, through the cemetery, and out to Pine Acres where we're tying to the gravity system. So again, the applicant is pursuing this option. He's currently negotiating with the diocese to get access through the cemetery at this point. Municipal water will continue to service the site. I don't know what's going on there. From a connection in Locust Street, and it will be looped out through the emergency vehicle access out to Reservoir Drive, improving flow and pressure through that area. So we have no impacts to the wetland resource areas. We have minimal impacts to the 100-foot buffer zone. We have no new structures within the 100-foot buffer zone. The clubhouse is located in the 100-foot wetland buffer, and the work associated with the reconfiguration of the parking lot also is within that 100-foot buffer zone, but there is minimal impacts to those areas. So, and all work obviously will be upgrading of any erosion control measures that are shown on the plans. So we feel that this project is consistent with the goals and objectives of the recently updated 2020 Town Master Plan. It provides housing to meet the demand of the silver tsunami of the older residents that are the growing population in town. These will again all be 2-bedroom units, which are very popular with residents over 50, which is again the growing housing demand in town. It also will provide diversity in housing, where 10% of these units will be affordable, most likely offsite, but we will be providing 10% units affordable. I believe that's 11 total units. And this will be maintained as a private development post-construction. It's not a subdivision. So the roads will be maintained privately, minimizing costs to the town. There'll be minimal costs or minimal impacts to the school system again, because these are all 2-bedroom units. So there will be minimal school-age children living in this development post-construction. So we feel that this is an excellent example of how Bellingham can achieve its goals and aspirations by providing a balanced approach to growth while maintaining the natural resources. We're also, again, maintaining 80% open space post-construction. And, we understand that the town is losing a golf course, but we are promoting recreational activity by repurposing the car paths to walking trails, also providing the bike and walking lane. So, with the 1.75 miles of walking trails, the common green area, the dog park, we feel that this development will foster a sense of community for years to come. And we also outlined in our cover letter how we feel that this proposal will serve the town interest better than a single-family residential development. I won't get into all of those points at this point. Most of those have been the items that I've been talking about throughout this presentation, but you can refer to the cover letter if you want more detail on those points. So again, we had our first conservation hearing last night. We have a notice of intent filing with the Conservation Commission. We will also have an earth removal permit with the ZBA. And depending on which track the wastewater goes, those permits will be determined, whether it be with the Board of Health or DEP. So we've had we've had 2 department head meetings, one last year and one last week. So we've tried to incorporate the comments we received in those hearings with the plans that were filed. And again, we feel that this is an appropriate development for this site. It's consistent with the town's master plan and consistent with the regulations and bylaws. So with that, I will conclude our presentation and send it back to the board.
Bill, you're muted.
Your comments right now, from an overview standpoint?
Yep. So for my comments from an overview standpoint, kind of big picture. So yes, I think James kind of hit it on the head. This right now is they're meeting the as it stands right now. They're meeting the special residential uses townhouse bylaw. Obviously, this is our first stab at it, so we will be procuring our engineer to start diving into those details, such as the drainage basins, the low impact development structures, and various other features of this. This is actually as we get into the process a little more, you guys you'll see the nuances of this project. It's relatively unique in that some of these drainage structures are really shallow and larger, and there's some unique features like the pond that's there now and how that's going to operate and be maintained over time. These are all things we'll have to dive into those details, but I think certainly getting some early input and feedback from the board as well as the public, and then we can get into site walks and stuff, like scheduling that kind of stuff at the end.
Jim, can you talk about the peer review and the checklist that we have, just to bring the public up to speed?
Sure.
The thoroughness of what we go through.
Yep. So James and the applicant haven't received the checklist just yet, but what it is essentially staff review. So I'll review the bylaws, each of the bylaws that they're submitting for. And our bylaws are cut and dry for the most part. It's going down this checklist here. And so we establish the checklist. I go through and vet it for the plan to make sure that it's all there essentially, and then provide it to the applicant, who will have to make edits and changes to meet the checklist. Then the next step is to dive into even further detail. So we'll have a peer review engineer looking at stormwater analysis, and again, going through all of our stormwater management bylaw best practices, going through the notice of, or the Wetland Protection Act, going through our MS4, which is an EPA standard, to make sure they're in compliance. As well as we'll have for this one, not always, but for this one specifically, I think the board would prefer a traffic engineer as very likely. And so a traffic engineer, again, will look at it, and they've already provided a report, but it's for them to analyze and confirm and make recommendations. Obviously, there's different traffic patterns with residential to a golf course. There was still a lot of trips already with a golf course, but nevertheless, they interact completely different. So we'll have a traffic engineer providing some input and support to the board to understand those impacts and any mitigation measures. And then, as the applicant mentioned, he did meet with the department heads once a while back and once fairly recently, just looking at this plan here. And we always seek comments from the department. So, I'll coordinate those and provide them to the board. Specifically for this one, obviously, it's DPW and talking with the different utilities, making sure water quality and flow is successful. Looking at the sewer versus septic, and then obviously emergency services, both the sight lines, traffic concerns potentially, emergency access, et cetera. So we'll certainly get that input and bring it all back to the board. And at that point, the board will have a robust set of resources to really start evaluating this.
As part of the department heads, have you heard from the fire chief?
I have heard from the deputy fire chief who's provided me with some guidance, but I'm expecting a memo from him to you by our next meeting.
Okay. Before I turn it over to the other board members, biggest question I have right now, regardless of the scope of the project, and that this is going to sound odd, sewer extension negotiations. I think that's going to be right now the biggest impact I believe for this development moving forward. Do we know where we stand and how viable is the sewer extension?
Well, I know, Mr. Benincasa is currently negotiating with the attorneys that represent the diocese. So
Do we know
I don't know
which
if
diocese it is? I've heard different dioceses.
I believe it's Providence.
Okay, that's what I've also been told.
Yeah.
Thought that was odd, being in.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not sure where he stands in those negotiations. I know he's been working on it for a fair amount of time. So I'm not sure exactly where he is at this point.
I think that answers.
I think he's
moving forward.
Yeah, I think Steve is on the call, so he may be able to address that.
I could just Steve Benincasa, one of the principals of the league. We have
Steve,
an
can you
agreement.
speak up? We can hardly hear you.
Sorry. We have a verbal agreement with the church, and we've been just working out the details. And unfortunately, it got kind of hung up with the attorneys. So with the church itself, we have a verbal agreement, but the attorneys have. There was one of the attorneys actually passed away that was working on it. So things kind of just got hung up in that area. So we anticipate that this is going to happen, but it's not finalized yet. So we did want to be upfront and tell you exactly where we were in the process.
I appreciate that. Early this evening, we had another applicant in front of us, and they mentioned the project was at the 2-yard line in regards to conservation. If you had to say what yard line we're on in regards to negotiations, are we 5, 10 yards, 2 yards away?
We're maybe at the 3 or 4 yard line.
Okay, that's good to hear.
I could say that.
Okay.
And we're hopeful.
I will hold off for questions. You have any questions?
You talking to me?
Yes, Buccaneer?
I'm sorry, Bill. You're talking to me.
I am talking to you.
All right. Thank you. So just a couple of general statements and then a couple of questions. So thank you for your presentation. What I would say and what I do say and what we say historically is that we take abutters' concerns very seriously, and I would encourage you to reach out to the abutters, listen to what they have to say, listen to their concerns, and to the best that your ability, try to incorporate into your plans anything that could address those concerns. I know that we'll be looking at their concerns extensively, so that's something that we always try to do. And to pick up on what Jim mentioned about a traffic study, this is going from sort of a seasonal use, I would imagine, relatively not high traffic, maybe more higher traffic on the weekends in the summertime, but to a more consistent traffic pattern. So I think that is something that we should look at, particularly. I know that Locust is a particular cut through for that area of town. So if we can look at that, that would be helpful. Something that we stress in every project is that the neighborhoods that we create have some sort of character, some feel, that it's just not a cookie cutter development. And I appreciate the effort you've gone to make a common, and you pulled the project in, and I think that's great. So we do emphasize traditionally character and things like that. I don't know anything about on-site wastewater pump stations, things like that. Some things that crossed my mind when I heard that, and I'm admittedly not informed on those topics, is we want to make sure that we're not positioning anything that would produce any sort of odor or noise or anything like that near neighbors, obviously, and that we try to look at that if that is actually something that we should be concerned about. And I can't tell from this what you have up on the screen now, but with regard to the dog park, I think that's a great idea. That's an example of character in establishing a well-designed neighborhood. But I would be concerned generically with the barkings of dogs, as where that's located next to any residential properties or existing properties that might be impacted by that. Those are just some of the things off the top of my head that I would say would be themes throughout these hearings.
Dennis?
I have nothing at this time, Bill.
Phil?
Yeah, when we get to the traffic peer review, I'd like to talk a little bit about the mailbox situation, how that's going to flow. I'd also like to see if we can get some clarification about the back gate area. I know eventually we'll do hopefully a site walk.
I have a question on that I'll get to.
Okay. But yeah, I'd like to hear some more about that back gate area and when and how it's going to be used. The dog park is unique, as Brian was commenting. I'd also like to hear about the maintenance plan for upkeep of the dog park. I have a dog, and I think that's a great idea, but I would like to hear how that's going to be upkept. And I also would like to hear what the residents' concerns are. I'm assuming we're going to hear about that in a little while, hear from the residents. So I'd like to see what concerns there are, and thank you for the presentation tonight.
Liz?
Yeah, I just want to Thank you as well for the presentation. I thought it was really well done. I would like to talk at some point about the choice between no sidewalks and sort of the bike pedestrian path, and how, you know, you expect to maintain the access to that. You know, cars can easily clog it up. If visitors are coming and they're parking there, I think a walkable, you know, neighborhood is important to the board, and I think, you know, the town. So that's something I'd like to discuss further when the time comes.
Robert?
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to thank the applicant, James. Thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough. I'm very interested to hear what's going to happen with the traffic peer review and the stormwater peer review as well. I did look through some of the materials, and I did notice a couple things that are most likely going to need to be tweaked. One of the things that I noticed was that the site appears to be in a zone 2. I don't know if you were aware of that, but I think that's going to affect some things. Nothing major, just some tweaks that'll need to be done. And I guess I can leave it at that. I'm very interested to hear what public comment or what the public has to say. But thank you again, and it seems like a very unique project, and it's very interesting. I'm interested to see how this pans out. So thank you.
Any other board members? So I want to as well echo what has been said by the other board members. I want to thank you for the detail in your presentation, the concept that you provided to us. It's very well presented. I can tell you from the public, I've heard several questions concerning the importance of the sewer, and as opposed to on site. So it looks like we're on the 3 or 4 yard line, hopefully the 3 yard line. So I think that can be worked through. I have heard from residents on Reservoir Road. Before I get specifically to the details, how far away is the boundary of Reservoir Road and the first house? I know you mentioned Squire, it's 300 feet away. How far away is the cul-de-sac at Reservoir Road?
Okay, so just eyeballing it, if that's 300 feet, I think that's the closest resident. So it's probably a little further away, maybe
Okay.
400 or 500.
Okay. And we can get that, you know, further fine tune as we go down the road. Specifically, and I'm just trying to prevent some of the questions from being asked that I've already heard. The location of the emergency access appears right now to be at the end of the cul-de-sac, where we have, I think, netting right now. Is it feasible to shift that down into the corner so we blend into the cul-de-sac and look more like a driveway?
I mean, it's certainly something we can look at. You're
Okay.
talking about moving it down towards this area here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we can certainly look at.
And in regards to the emergency exit, which is also meant to be the second means of access and egress, Jim, have we heard from the fire department at all?
Right, so yes, the fire department has weighed in, and they would like to see that emergency access remain. Obviously, we always ask them, you know, what are their priorities. So far to date, and again, I'll get you a formal memo from them, but so far to date, obviously, they are stating that, you know, the primary access will always be on Locust as it has been, but the secondary access, they truly do think it's a necessity, as you could probably tell when you go out there, there's actually already a gate there. So, you know, obviously they didn't have a formalized gravel drive or anything. This plan shows a paved, wider road. As we all know, you know, what's proposed isn't necessarily what the end result's going to be. But the fire department so far to date has stated that they would like to see that remain.
Also, Jim, for the public out there, this is our first meeting. I'm going to open up to the public in a moment. How long a process do you anticipate this to be?
Yeah, for the public, I could venture a guess, but as you guys know, as the board, it certainly varies depending on cooperation from the applicant, the time it takes to turn around some of these kind of very detailed plans. You know, it could be anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to more than that. You know, though I know the board has looked at residential properties and large ones like this, and it's taken 6 to 9 months sometimes.
Also, for the applicant and the engineer, as you move forward, there's some terminology the public may not be familiar with. Dark sky compliance was the first one I picked up on. So if you could just, as we move forward, try to put things in layman's terms for the benefit of the public, so they can, ask more informed questions. And we can also talk about down the road. I know it's very, very minor, but I noticed you didn't mention snow management, snow storage for this site. So maybe something we want to look at. And then for the public, there'll be, as time goes on and when it becomes appropriate, there'll be, Jim, can you talk about construction management if and when that becomes apparent?
Sure. So as the process moves along, we'll get into a more detailed, what's called a SWIP, a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And basically what that details is phasing and things like dust control and mud or ruin or the keeping the public way clean and all those things that if this were to be approved, the day-to-day construction activity and how that is maintained.
And again, I didn't want to put the cart before the horse there, but we've been going through development plans live and Zoom for several years now, and we have a rather robust program that takes into consideration the applicant's concern, but more overarching are the concerns of the residents. So at this point, I would like the residents, we can go back to the major screen. And turn it over to Jim.
James, you want to share the screen share? Thank you. And so, so if anybody has questions, comments, I'll try. Yeah, I'll try and sift through here and call on you based on the name that you have here. Mickey, I see you first.
Thank you for recognizing me. My name is actually Walter Callahan, and I live at 14 Reservoir Drive. And I have to say I was a bit surprised when I got notified about this particular development. And obviously, as a resident on Reservoir Drive, I have some major concerns, in particular about the disruption that's going to occur to our street in terms of potentially digging it up to run sewer lines as well as other utilities potentially. Also, the concern is about what's going to happen, and I think it's being brushed over in this presentation, about what's going to happen if in fact that route is taken down Reservoir and what's going to occur on the other side of Lake Street in line with Reservoir Drive in order to continue that wastewater route. That's going to disrupt a major, a bunch of trees, forests that's been there for quite a long time. It is filled with extensive wildlife. I know myself and many of the residents in the area enjoy that space, which abuts Arcan Park, and gives us also access into the park via hiking and trails that are existing there. I think that's being totally brushed over on this presentation. given the fact that it appears that this alternative route for the wastewater is almost a done deal, as I see it, going down Reservoir Drive. I'm also concerned about having that pump station and treatment center so close to our neighborhood on Reservoir Drive. Nothing has been mentioned as of yet about the sound and the smell conditions that we might be exposed to. So I would like to see that presented. And also, you know, in looking at the plans more carefully over the last few days, I've noticed that there's a paper road of Locust on the plan. And I was wondering if the developer had considered running utilities down that path rather than over through Reservoir Drive. So those are some of my concerns presently. And also being that I abut Jenks Reservoir, I'm hoping that this development doesn't have a dramatic effect on the condition of that water body. As of now, it's overgrown with algae, and I hate to see it get even worse than it is right now. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to the chairperson. I appreciate you giving me the chance to speak this evening.
Sure, thank you very much. Bonnie, I think you were second. Could you just
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Bonnie Lafrac. I live at 15 Luke Street. So I'm in Rentham, so you might not really care what I have to say.
No, we care.
I have two little kids and nowhere to walk. So we try to walk up that like Oak Summit that's off of Locust and Luke there. The traffic already is bad on my street. I take my life into my own hands right now. Never mind when you have 110 new units, potentially each with 2 cars. So you're talking about adding potentially over 200 more cars to my street. And that makes it very hard to pull out. I can barely pull out of my driveway now. The street is very narrow for those of you who've driven on Locust/Luke. I'm curious as to when the actual study was done on this road. Was it done in 2020 during the pandemic when nobody drove anywhere? Because it's very dangerous right now.
That will be looked at as part of a review of the traffic study. And if we feel the numbers need to be updated, Jim, you can address that better than I can.
No, you're spot on. So the traffic engineer for the applicant, yes. So they did some traffic counts this year, my understanding, but also look back historically at the numbers because, as Bonnie obviously pointed out, the numbers aren't the same now as it is a few years ago and likely won't be a couple years from now. And obviously our traffic engineer for you guys will be highlighting that and making sure that those are legitimate numbers that are going to be analyzed moving forward.
I appreciate being heard. Thank you very much. It is, I mean, it is a cut. I think you guys mentioned this is not a secret. It's a cut through street. And I'm sure like a lot of us, we buy houses and we don't know that, right? You go look at the house and you're not aware that this is the Rhode Island Speedway. And, you know, I'm almost on the corner, you know, of West Street. So it's very busy. There's cars all during rush hour. And if you guys add another 200 plus cars and well, you know, I appreciate being heard and I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Well, Bonnie, thank you very much. Jim, before we go on to anyone else, can you just talk about the peer review process? And that peer review is done on behalf of the town. Could you just...
Right, so for all applications, luckily in Mass General Law, they thought of this well in advance. So whenever an application comes before a board, the board has the ability to request funding from the applicant to pay for what's called a peer review. And so what my responsibility is to seek out a peer review engineer to address any of the concerns the board may have and get a scope. And then I request the funds to pay for that scope from the applicant. And Mass General Law says that they're obligated to do so. And then, you know, that's the funding mechanism that I administer back to our peer review engineer. So it's back and forth with just directly between the engineer and the town, with the applicant, seeing that information and responding to it, but doesn't have, any kind of role in the analysis. So we'll be at least at minimum procuring a stormwater engineer and a traffic engineer to look at this. And luckily we have a really good one that we've been using for several large projects in BSC, and Frank's here with us tonight to get a exploratory inside look at what he's signing up for.
Jim, I also, for the public, I want to mention, and I'm going to embarrass our alternate member. We were fortunate to have someone apply to the alternate, and he is a civil engineer. So he's been dealing with these types of processes for a long time. And again, he's on the board, and he'll be looking out for the town's best interests.
And he's blushing now. So.
The depth and breadth of this board, I will match up with any planning board in the area.
Mr. Chairman, I do see a hand raised by Mr. Bob Biaggi.
Bob?
Hi, thank you for giving me some time. Bonnie didn't exactly steal my thunder. She just added lightning to my concerns as well. I live on 4 Sydney Lane in Bellingham off of Locust Street. Big concerns about the traffic that goes up and down Locust Street routinely, specifically during rush hour times. Has there been consideration as to mitigating any of those concerns with some construction on Locust Street to potentially widen the road and or add sidewalks to the area?
That could be something we could look into as we move down this road. And also anything we can do to control traffic. I'm not talking about lights, but just, any way we can slow the traffic down as best we can.
Yeah, speed limit signs just don't seem to do the trick. When I moved in here 20 years ago, I requested and was fortunate to get Go Children Slow signs around Sydney Lane due to children being at the bus stop, obviously during rush hour times. A lot of concern regarding the width of the road, though, and if there was any negotiations with the contractor for some updates to Locust Street itself.
Again, Bob, this is the first meeting we're having, and those are the things that we will discuss as we go down the road.
Excellent. Thank you for the time.
And I appreciate you bringing it up. I see 2 other hands raised. Anyone else had their hand raised before Deb and Patricia? Dorothy, can you unmute yourself, please? We can't hear you.
If you had thought about mitigating the problems that will happen to wildlife in our neighborhood. I live on Reservoir Drive, and we have a beautiful array of animals there, and especially birds. We just found 5 baby foxes in our neighborhood, and I think most of us who live here love being near the wildlife and the trees, and what's going to happen to them.
We will look at that impact as well. Jim, just make a note of that, and hopefully, James, you picked up on that as well as the other questions.
Yes, I'm taking notes.
And I don't expect to have an answer for Dorothy for you this evening. I'm sure James will get in touch with none and look into it. Deb Wade.
Hi, this is Deb Wade. I'm also on Reservoir Drive. I was looking at the plans with the amount of trees that are in the plan for the border between this new development and Squire and Reservoir. Would it be possible to have the ability to get more trees in there? Everything I'm seeing in there it loses its leaves in the winter. I'd like to see a lot more evergreen, but I but basically just the idea of getting a little forest between this development and the folks that have been living on these streets for the last 30 some years. And
Yeah, I'm
plus.
not going to ask Jim to answer that. I can tell you that in past developments, the sport has looked at that. We've asked them to look at their landscaping program, and if it needs to be robust in some areas. One area I'm thinking particularly of is the area the netting is currently located on the cul-de-sac.
I don't know what you say.
And, try to look at that as best we can. But I know the applicant will look at it, Jim will look at it, and as Bellingham residents, we will look at it as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
First iteration doesn't mean the last one.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we get so specific, we may look at caliper of the trees as well. Patricia.
Talk.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
You had your hand raised?
Okay.
You have a question, Patricia?
Yes. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Bob Jolliker, Patricia's husband. My question is about the water supply on Rentham Road. We've lived here for 50 years now, since around 1970. And Bellingham has always been noted to have the best water around. And we do sell a lot of our water to other towns. And the wells that are on Rentham Road supply a lot of people. Now, I'm concerned with the runoff from the vehicles, the salt in the winter, and everything else that drops on the ground. You say you have a 50-foot, well, 25-foot sand base over there. Now, sand is a filtering agent. Is the oil going to seep through the ground and get into our water supply? That's one of my main concerns. The other concern, like everyone else, is the traffic. Right now, believe me, Locust isn't the only speedway from Rhode Island. Lake Street is even worse, only because it's narrower than Locust, if you can believe it. I just hope that all these issues, especially the water, can be addressed and proven to us that the water system will still be safe when all this is over. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for your question. Jim, the best way to address that is something obviously we'll look at.
Yeah, we'll certainly discuss that with our peer review engineer as well as our DPW who does our wells and return with some comments for you guys.
And again, the applicant is taking notes, Mr. Jolliker. So that will, he'll have a more defined answer for you. Jerome?
Thank you. I am also an abutter on Luke Street in Rentham, and just at the risk of being redundant, I just want to reiterate the same thing about the concern about the traffic.
Okay.
Locust Street is a huge cut through for traffic that comes from 495, comes down this road, ironically enough, to cut over to 99 and 295 in Rhode Island. It between 7 and 8 in the morning or so, and 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoons, there is nothing but Rhode Island cars that pass our house. And it even can get difficult to get out of the driveway during those hours. I know that fixing that is not necessarily your concern, but I just want to add my thought to the rest of the comments that have been made that it is a very heavily trafficked road.
Thank you, sir. That will be addressed in our traffic study.
Well, then the second part of that is.
So it will be. Not that it's falling on deaf ears.
I understand. I just wanted to add that to the number of but there's also a second part to that is when that golf course was built, all the traffic that came in, all the construction traffic, they took tons and tons of dirt out of that area. And they all came up Luke Street onto West Street into Rentham. And from that intersection of Luke Street and West Street, it's a 1 mile uphill grade. And you could not you didn't want to one of those trucks, so you're on the way to work or going to school in the morning. I don't know if that could be something that could be mitigated, but certainly having all that traffic flow into that particular roadway during that construction was also a problem. I don't know if this would be the same issue for when this development is built, but just to kind of finalize that, the biggest concern, I think the idea, the whole thing is terrific. It's a beautiful plan, but the traffic is going to be what's going to be the biggest concern.
Thank you, sir. In regards to the hauling and construction, that will be looked at as we go through this process. They will need, Jim, dirt removal is what type of board, what board?
Yeah, so depending on the quantity, it will be a separate hearing process with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So there will be the same noticing processes you receive for this notice, as well as in the paper and online, et cetera. So if it does go to the zoning board for earth removal, that would be a separate process. But again, the boards will be, sharing information and working together.
To those people that have talked about the traffic issue, although I live on the Bellingham-Blackstone border, about 3 weeks ago, I believe it was a Friday afternoon, Friday morning, there was an accident in Franklin on the end of, maybe on Pulaski Boulevard, just beyond Locust Street. And I noticed there was traffic backed up. There were no detour signs. So I thought I could backtrack and come up Locust Street like everyone else. So I did witness traffic that morning. So it is, something that I, as a board member, I'm familiar with, and it is something we'll look into. But I think some of you may know that morning I'm talking about, where I think it started halting traffic at around 4 o'clock in the morning. I think that detour signs are put up around 9 o'clock. So that is not falling on deaf ears. Diane, I believe you had your hand raised.
Yes, I did. Diane Martin, I am the power of attorney for Helen Labonte at 660 Rentham Road. She is my mother. It is the property where I grew up. I no longer live there. One of the questions I have, I know you're talking about putting a buffer on Squire Lane. I'd like to see an overlay as far as how far the property comes to the border of the property along Rentham Road also.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I know there is
You're breaking up.
I know there is a stream back there. I'd like to know the distance between the stream and if there's a possibility of putting a buffer. The property line for my mother's property goes right to the edge of the stream. I don't want to be seeing the condos as I walk back there, or a possibility of a house being built further back and where the yard would be in the future. That's the end of my comment.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, Mr. Chairman, so the stream, I believe she's talking about to the south, and I know Conservation Commission will be looking at that closely as well as us. So, we'll certainly take a close look at that and provide some recommendations there.
Jim, one question that has not been asked, I would just like to clarify because I'm surprised it has not come up. Notification of this meeting. Want the people that live within how many feet?
So notification in the mail will come to you if you're within 300 feet of the property line. However, obviously it's posted in the paper, posted online, email blast, and all of the public documents, all of the project documents are posted on the planning board's website under proposed projects. So everything that the board gets, you'll see right there posted on the website. So you can actually go to the website right now and check out those plans. And also, obviously, you guys are here, so you've got some sort of notification, but you're always welcome to give my office a call at the planning office, and I'm happy to sit down with each one of you and go through the plan set and answer any
I see
questions.
there are 2 more questions, but I just want to pick up on that. I know a question was asked, why weren't people notified? and I'm sure some of you here were notified, some of you weren't. Regardless of if you're notified or not, I want you to participate in this process as we go through it. Your input will be valuable, and it is, we really need this as we move forward. I'm not sure who was first. Mick, I see you, but I also saw the Upjohn and Karen Davis. Miss Davis, I'll start with you first. I apologize if I went out of order. Miss Upjohn. Karen?
Thank you. I am a resident at 23 Reservoir, and in looking at the plans, I can see that the fence that's between us and the proposed development is still a chain link fence, and I'd like to see something a little more solid, like a white vinyl.
Okay.
I'm interested to know if there's a possibility of using this proposed access road as a construction entrance.
At first blush, Jim, we can talk about that. But right now, as we move forward, Karen, the scope of what I would envision for the access road is I want to keep it as narrow as possible. I do not want to widen it for construction vehicles.
Okay.
Because once it's widened, it becomes more accessible. So ideally, we would like to keep it as wide it is now, or maybe even narrow the width a little bit. The intent there is, as we go down the road, a disincentive to make it a public way.
Okay.
We will put conditions into this process if and when we get there on the emergency access.
And that will include a better spec for the gate, because that's not included in the plans.
We will definitely get there. We will talk about, as you heard earlier, about more robust landscaping. As a board, I know you mentioned white. Sometimes we're looking at more neutral, like green or gray fences. So it's not as harsh on some people, but that's something we can work through. But it is unlikely to remain a chain link fence right now.
Okay.
We'll work through that process. Karen, I apologize if your hand was raised earlier. Ms. Upjohn?
Hi, my name is Beth Vance. I live at 6 Reservoir Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think Karen mostly addressed what I was going to ask. It's about the access road. I was hoping for more detail about what the gate on that access road is. I have concerns about the traffic coming potentially through our neighborhood, if people can get through any kind of gate on that access road. Obviously, Lake Street is narrow. The traffic is already a concern. When I come out of my street, I actually roll down my window so I can hear if there are cars coming, because there is a hill and you can't always see the cars, especially when they're flying over the hill, which they often do. And that Lake Street, I think, would be a preferable way to go if cars were able to go that way, because of the light that sits at Lake and Pulaski. In rush hour traffic, it's difficult to make a left onto Pulaski. And I think that light that's there provides a more desirable option. I have concerns if there are ways to get through that access road from the new development, that people would try to come through our neighborhood that way.
Okay. Karen, what I can tell you, and I've had discussions with several of your neighbors. The access road, I think we need to come up with a better terminology for it. It's going to be an emergency access road. So yes, it will be gated. I think the gate will be further down, not at the beginning. We'll try to have it narrow. The goal is to try to blend in with the neighborhood. You may have another sign for a dead end road, but our intent simply is this is an emergency access in the event of an unforeseen accident that blocks off both roads into the development. It's not designed to be a cut through. It's not designed to add traffic to Reservoir Road. The only way that would be used is in the event of an emergency, with one caveat other than perhaps having the, if we get that far, the developer removing snow from it and maintaining it. The goal
Mr.
is to
Chairman,
make
I
it
see,
look like a driveway and not a road.
I see Sean Wade had his hand up as well.
Mr. Wade?
Thank you for hearing me. I am Sean Wade. I live on 17 Reservoir Drive. I'd just like to clear up a few things. One, yes, there is a gate at the end of Reservoir Drive that is a second access, but it is not usable. If you look at the plan set, it is a pretty steep drop off, and you could not get a normal sedan down the hill, let alone a fire truck. So
That's correct.
So I would argue that I would like to seek alternatives to that road. I love the idea of reducing it to a driveway. I love the idea of reducing it from paved to possibly a crushed stone. I also, on that same topic, had a question about all the pathways. I understand that they are currently paved because the golf carts travel on them, but I would love to see those reduced down to a crushed stone as well. Again, several residents have talked about water quality. We want to reduce that impervious material wherever we can on the site, if at all possible. And while sticking with water removal, snow. We live at the end of a cul-de-sac right now. Where there's a fire hydrant that DPW happily buries, that whole cul-de-sac gets filled with snow. Where's the snow going to go? And before I move on and let you answer this, I understand it's the first shot.
No, that's fine, sir.
I'd like to touch back on the woods that keeps getting glanced over, and we're going to cut through the cemetery. It's not just the removal of trees. And when people think of animals getting displaced, they think deer, fox. No, it's rats. It's mice. These are going to be driven into our homes. These are going to be driven into the homes on the opposite side of Lake Street that weren't notified of this meeting. Those are the things I worry about. Thank you for hearing me tonight.
Sean, I would suggest if you want, if you can, share your concerns with neighbors on Lake Street.
Oh, I have been.
Good. As you've heard me say several times, I know I've been told one of the biggest concerns is the emergency exit. Our goal is, number one, we need to move it. Where it currently is right now, you go downhill, and a fire truck could get down the hill. I don't think you could get back up or up the other side of that hill. So I think that has to be moved and try to make it blend in with the cul-de-sac in the neighborhood. In regards to snow management, one of my concerns that I did ask the developer was how he plans to manage snow. That will also be on the emergency access road. And I know Mr. Biaggi is here. And I know obviously Jim is here. And that's something we bring up with our DPW about storage of snow at the end of the cul-de-sac. But our goal is, as I've said several times, if we get to this point, is to make that emergency access road. Blend in
Nicole.
the neighborhood. And also the double-edged sword of that, we may put additional signage at the end of Reservoir Road for a dead end sign. But there will be additional signage to discourage people from driving down Reservoir Road.
We already have a dead end sign, but thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
But we will not broadcast that there's an emergency access road there.
So, Mr. Chairman, I see Nicole Lonerigan.
And I see
Sorry to butcher
Erin
that.
Moreland. Nicole?
How you doing? I live at 70 Lake Street, so I live at the end of Reservoir, right at the corner. We moved in here roughly 7, going on 8 years ago with our family and dogs that you can probably hear in the background. We moved here because it's a quiet neighborhood. So my biggest concern, which I know a lot of people have said, is the potential for increased traffic, which we know is going to happen. I know it's everybody scratching their heads, but I moved in here because my children can play basketball on that street, and I know that they're not going to get hit by a car because everybody that lives on this street knows that my children, as well as 2 other families of children, play on this street. Also with that access road and the snow. So the snow gets piled up not only onto the fire hydrant, but it also gets piled up onto my property, right at the corner.
Okay.
Not only that, but when the plows come through, they dig up the sidewalk that is kind of there and the front of my property. So if we're going to be going through the woods and potentially blowing that through to make another access road, what's going to happen there with the traffic coming through?
I will make sure we will make sure that's part of the traffic study.
And if traffic's going to be coming through, I feel as though I would like my property protected, because as we speak, I have people that drive on my property. I have people that walk through my property. And like I said, the town has already been throwing snow on my property. So the addition to the traffic that not only comes through Woonsocket, but Bellingham itself really is gonna, I don't know, I think deplete my property value in general. And that's very upsetting. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. And Aaron, did you have your hand up at one point? Sir, I'll go back to you. I think you're the last person I see with their hand raised. Yes, sir. I see you was making.
Walter.
First name.
Right?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to point out an observation from tonight's Zoom call. As I was concerned initially when I spoke with Mr. Kupfer yesterday, the fact is it doesn't seem like there's all that many people on this call to begin with. I thought there would be more public involvement. And I'm afraid that there was probably quite a few people that might have been turned away down at the town hall this evening thinking it was going to be held in the Arcan room. In which case, you know, I'm glad that we had this session this evening, but I think it behooves us, and certainly for the benefit of other residents who probably didn't know how to use Zoom or had difficulty getting in on this call tonight, that we somehow find a way where we can sit down in person and still social distance at the same time. I sent Mr. Kupfer a notification via email yesterday that told him that I think it would be a smart move to convene possibly a meeting with our residents here in the neighborhood, perhaps with the members of the planning board, as well as the developer and the client, if they wanted to. Because I don't think we're getting a full picture right now of all the concerns that are really involved at this stage. I too second the motion of traffic on Lake Street where it intersects Reservoir Drive particularly. It is terrible. And, you know, no one seems to want to pay attention in alleviating that. And I hope with this project, maybe we'll get some action finally. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, can you specifically address the public meeting in the Zoom process?
Yeah, so I mean, I appreciate Walter's comments. I will say though, 53 people, that's by far the most people we've ever had in person by probably 30. So I think this is a good, robust turnout actually. But I do agree with Walter that I'm sure there's a couple people, couple homeowners that certainly wouldn't be able to use Zoom. And I have been trying to stress for anyone who calls that they're welcome to, you know, come by my office and we can discuss plans, or I can even give them a tutorial on Zoom, honestly. But I get the hesitation for some folks. I completely understand that. And obviously, I don't need to be a broken record, but you know, this is a governor's order that's requiring that, you know, there's strict limitations. And you know, we've been doing this for about 1.5 years with pretty good success, I would say. A lot of participation, and again, a lot more than actually in person over the past 5 years. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But yeah, that's, I respect Walter's comment though.
Jim, right now, we could not have 53 people at the arcade room, correct?
That's correct. We're right now with the limitations, I believe we're at around 20 plus the board. And even that, I mean, it's everyone has their own comfort level and safety level, but I think that might be a little tight in that room. But nevertheless, as things progress, the board has certainly been discussing different options, and we'll keep the public apprised of those.
I appreciate the concerns about the Zoom portion of this, but right now we cannot have this amount of people in a public meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I see one or two. I know you said
Yeah,
list
I
of
see
comments, but if you
Brian
want to take one or
Rhodes.
two more.
Mr. Rhodes?
I'd like to yield to Mr. Fluette. He's had his hand up for many people.
I did not see Mr. Floyd. I
He
apologize.
might be on a different screen. He's had his hand up the whole time.
Mr. Floyd?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A few comments. First of all, the gentleman who spoke in terms of the design of this project did a very good job. I was quite impressed with that. So I do appreciate that. It's easy to follow and quite clearly spelled out on a number of fronts in a number of areas. The concerns I'm calling about specifically have to do with traffic on Locust Street. We've been here since late 70s. This road at the time was pretty much not much more than a farm road, quite frankly. And I could take out 2 young children bike riding on this street with very little concern about safety because there was so little traffic on this road. When prior to the golf course, there was a farm and it became a vegetable farm, and even traffic to the vegetable farm was not a major issue for safety. What changed here has been the last 20 or so years with increased commercial industrial development, not just in Bellingham, but certainly all along 495, as we know. The traffic has has increased in major ways. I don't have numbers for you, but it's significant, and some people have spoken to that already. Secondly, there's now, in the reverse direction, heading south, more traffic going the other way than there ever was in the past. So there are a number of people going from Massachusetts now into Rhode Island through Jenks Street, which is a cutoff to get through Cumberland. I want to talk about traffic is the major concern I have, frankly, especially as one gets down this end of the road. First of all, when this road was redesigned, it's been about probably 20 years now, perhaps a little more than that. It was indeed widened. It was indeed straightened out. Drainage was put on the street for the first time, which helped significantly in a number of ways. However, there are a number of issues that are now loom larger for 2 reasons. One is traffic has increased so much more than even 20 years ago. Secondly, some of it has to do with the design of the street on what is now the Bungie Brook end. First of all, the telephone poles were replaced before the street was ever done in terms of moving them. I can tell you the street got widened to the point where if you look at the telephone poles heading south, you'll see gashes at about where truck mirrors are. Those are from truck mirrors, folks, hitting those telephone poles, and there are a number of them. They're too close. That's an issue when one is driving through there for people because they tend to push towards the middle of the road to get away from those telephone poles. And everybody's judgment about how close it is or not, that's another issue entirely. Secondly, from my driveway at 45 Locust Street, looking south once more, there is a you can't see around the bend fully. Nook and my neighbor and who's closer to that bend than I am, and I think the neighbor next door is further away from that bend. It may be less of an issue, but I do know it's a major issue. When I pull out of the driveway, generally go south, so I can get back up into the street to get into that south lane without too much of a problem. But if I go north, oftentimes I pull out, and next thing I notice a car right on top of me. That plus further down, directly in front of Buggy Brook and where this entrance exit will be with all those vehicles, that sticks out on the road terribly also. And that should be straightened out so that it's more of a straightaway. There's ledge in there. They did take away some of it to put in drainage in front of that when they redesigned it 20 some odd years ago. But they left too much for the road. So people have to weave in and out going by the, excuse me, very exit entrance to this project. And that creates difficulties. Thirdly, I want to address the issues on Luke Street, which is Rentham, and I know it's a separate town. However, this project impacts that severely, and we've heard some residents from there, which I appreciate. Directly in front of Oak Street is ledge that sticks out right on the road. There isn't a foot from that road to that ledge. People, again, gravitate to the center of the road because it sticks right out. It's about 2.5 feet high or so. It's rock to some degree. And that has to be straightened out if we're going to make this road a little safer and more manageable for traffic purposes. Further down, directly opposite, right after the Oak Street entrance, south again, that first driveway, there's a ledge there that is like 8 feet high and sticks out into the road as well. I want to tell you, most people find that too narrow to navigate, not to mention the ledge, again, is less than a foot off the side of that road. Thirdly, the bend further down, again on Luke Street, there's a tree on the left that sticks out into the road. So if you're trying to take it wide to allow cars on the right who are getting south to go by, you're going to clip some of the branches sticking out in the road in that tree. There's a bend further down on Luke Street. So that end of this right away, if you like, through this entire area, Locust and Luke, that end is even more compromised than I think much of Locust Street is. Heading north from my house, Locust Street isn't too bad, except when you get above Sydney Street, prior to getting to Pulaski, there's a bend there also, which is quite frankly narrow and should be straightened out to some degree. And I think that would help a lot in terms of providing enough width for people to drive safely through that area. Those are the comments I have for now. Frankly, those are the major concerns. And the development looks interesting. It looks like it's been well designed. And yes, I know there's a need for this type of development in Bellingham, but traffic is a major safety issue for us all here in this street. Thank you very much.
Mr. Flood, thank you very much. Brian.
My name is Brian Rhodes. I live at 40 Locust Street. I actually have 2 roles when I wanted to present right now and ask questions. My house is 10 feet from the proposed parking lot. My property line is 10 feet from the proposed parking lot that will be paved. And my house is probably, my daughter can accidentally hit the clubhouse with toys. So we're extremely close. A lot of the and actually prior to that, Mr. Salisbury at the beginning said, abutters' concerns are priority in Bellingham. I believe that was Mr. Salisbury that said that at the very beginning. And hopefully, Mr. Almonte, you'll be meeting with a lot of the abutters and a lot of the residents in the vicinity, just so that way it doesn't tie up meetings like this as much, and you will address all our concerns. But my concern would be the tree lines that I keep seeing and being discussed are between Squire Lane and the golf course and concerns about Reservoir Road. However, I'll have a parking lot with plenty of lighting and a lot of people coming and going from a clubhouse right up against my property. As of right now, if somebody drops their car keys, I can hear it in my garage if they drop their car keys when they're going in or out of the golf course. Right now, it's all professionals driving Mercedes, BMWs. Mr. Garrow has been a fantastic neighbor, fantastic businessman, always taking care of me. My concern is now it will be families there. So I would be very concerned about not having, you know, one of the people had brought up putting a white vinyl fence instead of a chain link fence on the other side. I would like a fence and also a tree line to protect the wetlands. I brought that up at the Conservation Committee last night. A lot of concern about erosion, also major concern about safety. If there's a walking path within the, right at a very steep embankment, a child could easily fall down there. If it's a silver tsunami, a silver fox could accidentally fall down that embankment. I'd be concerned about that as well. So that's one concern on the Locust Street side. Also is a considerable drop from the low elevation into that area. So I imagine Mr. Alamonte is going to address those concerns specifically at a later date with new plans. The second concern I have in a different role, I am the president of the Wilcox Cemetery. The Wilcox Cemetery is actually across from, it's on Reservoir Road. So at the end of one of the house that's on Lake Street, I am directly across from that. So I'm not sure how a sewage line would go from there crossing, going through Reservoir Road across Lake Street. It's either going to go through people's front yards or through my cemetery and through my father and grandfather and great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather, because I have lived on, my family's had this property for over 150 years. So, you know, I've lived in my, at 40 Locust Street. 45 years ago is the first time I moved into 40 Locust Street prior to going in the military. I moved to 60 Locust Street, which is another butter, my mother. I am back at 40 Locust Street. So my two concerns would be a residential abutter, but then also concern for the cemetery, because I think the only way you could put a sewage line is straight through the middle of the street, which would prevent anybody from coming and going from their house for a period of time. Because right now, the cemetery is probably at an elevation 15 feet higher than the street, and we already have erosion concerns, you know, to the point where I'm concerned about graves being exposed at some point due to erosion. So with the construction, it's going to be a very severe concern. Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me, and Mr. Alman.
Absolutely. Thank you for your participation. Chris.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to echo what was just said and also tell you that I am at 18 Reservoir Drive. So I am directly, my property directly abuts the golf course. And I would echo what my neighbor across the street said about the fence as well. Another concern, which was just mentioned, is that it's a very steep drop off at the edge of my property and where the fence is that separates my property from the golf course. And I didn't see really anything in the plans that would prevent people from getting down there. That is a danger. I know it was just mentioned, but I wanted to bring that up on this side of the project as well. Because although it's been mentioned several times, whether in what I've read or even tonight during the presentation, that this is really geared towards the 50+ folks, really I could see a lot of young families moving in here as well. So I think that's something that absolutely needs to be addressed from a safety concern. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I will note that we do have a few other items on the agenda tonight.
Okay, so Jim, I'd like to, what's the next step?
Yeah, so obviously the participation doesn't end here. I think I heard from the board, and I think we may want to set up a site walk. And typically, we invite, the applicant to lead the charge in reviewing the design during that site walk, but also, interested neighbors are welcome to attend as well. And so once maybe I can reach out to the board early next week to set up a site walk, and then I can relay that out to those that are participating this evening and see if anybody wants to join us. So that would be between now and the next meeting, hopefully.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is, before we do the site walk, I think the applicant has a lot of information to go through. So I think once he gets some of these answers done, closer to a second meeting in June, maybe more applicable time for a site walk.
Yep, okay. And
The
as well
applicant
as,
can do his homework, and we
Yep.
go through the questions that have been raised this evening.
that works, as well as I'll get the peer review started for you as well.
I'm sorry?
I'll also get the peer review established as well, so we can
Okay.
start getting the traffic analyzed and stormwater analyzed. So I think you're right, Mr. Chairman. I think, potentially maybe continuation to the second meeting in June. That would be June 24th. Seems to make sense if you guys agree.
I'll ask the board members. Brian?
So, yeah, so I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing until the second meeting in June.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? During the session, I just want to thank, I think our highest number of participants this evening were 53 or 54. I think that's been the most productive Zoom meeting we've had in about 12 to 14 months. Although this venue is not ideal, I'd have accommodated this at Town Hall. Jim, I've also believe you've extended the opportunity for a Saturday meeting with you and I or something to that effect.
Yeah, so that's something maybe we could, you and I can work through, maybe an open house of some kind. We did this last summer with the large project before you. And it seemed to be successful with some of the neighbors wanting to come out and having a little bit more of a intimate session with, a board member and myself and going through the plan. So if we can start, I can work with you on scheduling that. And then again, I can get the word out to the neighbors too. So we can,
I think what I would like to do is we've put this off to the 24th. And maybe we can do it fairly quickly after meeting of the 24th. Obviously not on, I don't think it'd be appropriate on 4th of July weekend, but once we've had the opportunity to go out through all the information, maybe a good time then on a Saturday to look at every one of those meetings. We can look at the various locations to do that. I do not know how many people can socially distance at the clubhouse restaurant on site, but or we could use the Arcan one and again deal with that social distancing there as well.
Yeah, not a problem. I can work through that detail. I don't think we got an all in favor yet.
Before that, so that was part of the discussion to thank the public. I'd like to call for people to move the meeting, public comments, public input to the second meeting in June. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining, that motion passes unanimously. Again, to the public here tonight, I cannot thank you enough. I encourage you to talk to your neighbors, people that have received a notice being a 300-foot abutter. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to the board. Thank you to Jim for all your help, and thank you for the abutters for all their comments.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Jim, the next item on the agenda is asphalt engineering modification. Could you read the hearing notice, please?
Yep, absolutely. In accordance with the Town of Bellingham zoning bylaws, section 24016 development plan approval, 24031 use regulation schedule, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 13th, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Arcan meeting room in the Minister Center, as well as utilizing the virtual meeting option found on the Town of Bellingham website. The general public may participate utilizing the virtual option found on the town website. The applicant and owner, Farm Street Property Management LLC, proposed to amend the previously issued development plan decision and special permit decision dated May 25, 2017 to expand the crushing of asphalt operation at 190 Farm Street in Bellingham, approximately 15 plus or minus acres of land shown on Assessment Map 714 Zone Industrial. The application was prepared by Farm Street Property Management, 190 Farm Street. Applications may be viewed at the Planning and Zoning Office or Town Clerk Office in the Municipal Center, 10 Mechanic Street, Bellingham, Mass. during regular business hours. A motion to open the hearing.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second?
We have a motion on the floor to open the public hearing on asphalt engineering. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, that motion passes unanimously. Jim, can you give us an overview of what's happening this evening?
Sure. So if you recall, many of you are familiar with the folks at Asphalt Engineering. They were before us a few years back for a new facility on 190 Farm Street. They have decisions dated May 25th, 2017. In discussions with the owners, they are seeking to amend those decisions with just one of the conditions, condition 8, which stipulates that the asphalt engineering is limited to crushing activities to no more than 20 days per calendar year. And so the applicant is here before you tonight to discuss that request. Obviously, it's an amendment of the special permit and development plan. And so just like every public hearing, you'll take in that information, and so it can be either an approval, denial, or some sort of amendment to that condition specifically.
I'd like to turn it over to the applicants.
Hi, Erin Moreland.
Nathan Moreland, how you doing today?
So we wanted to come in front of you. First and foremost, we have absolutely loved the past few years in the new facility, and with the crushing operation in the back and having the gravel available, we've seen so much involvement in our company, and getting to be a larger part of the community has been wonderful. Our neighbors have been great. Jim, as far as I understand, we've had no issues regarding the operation that we have, specifically referencing the crushing operation out back. There were a couple times last year that we would get rained out. A situation would be where, say, what was it, 2-3 weeks at a time we would end up crushing.
Usually 2 weeks.
I think there was one period where we crushed for like a straight 3 weeks because there were some rain days in between. And Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that during that time, had we not notified him that we were doing it, that really anybody would have even known it was going on. As per our original sound study back in the day, it proved that you can't hear anything. I think that the 3 years that we've been doing it now supports that as well. We also feel that us being able to produce more material will actually lessen some of the trucking that's currently happening, because what we're finding as a company, obviously, especially during this time, is it's getting harder and harder to get material, and you're having to pay more and more for material. Because we're only able to crush our material 20 days a year, we're running out frequently of sub-base material. So what we're actually having to do on our Medway contractors or storage pile of gravel is we're having to truck in gravel material to then have gravel material to use on these jobs. So that's our biggest reason that we're here. This is not the climate where we want to be paying $10, $11 a ton plus tax when we essentially can create the product for about $2, $3 a ton. So we really need to be able to open up the ability to do that more frequently. Again, I don't see it having any negative impact visually because obviously nobody can see what's going on back there. We did send Jim a picture of our operation from above. Jim, I don't know if you would like to possibly pull that up, if you don't mind. I'm not as technically savvy as some people here because I don't know how to do it on my screen, but all right. Thank you, Jim. Just so everybody can see what we're referencing, obviously up front is our brand new facility. You follow down, it's actually about a 22-acre parcel in its entirety. The crushing, you can actually, what's pretty cool about this photo is this was actually taken while we were crushing. So this was a Sunday, hence no vehicles in the parking lot. But you can actually see the crusher that we have marked as crusher location. You see the asphalt pile to the front of it, and then the gravel operation behind it.
Gravel storage.
Gravel storage behind it. So really, the only neighbor that we feel from a sound standpoint that would be close enough would probably be our neighbors to the left, but they're often excavating and using cutting down trees and the like. So that's probably the best description of what we're doing as far as it not having an impact. As far as the sale of material, which we did reference in our request as well, there's really nothing stopping us from doing that now, right? We have the gravel out back on the Medway property. The reason we need that, to be an option for us is technically Farm Street Property Management is who owns that operation. Asphalt Engineering is a separate entity. We really want to be able to sell that material to Asphalt Engineering, maybe another couple vendors that we work closely with. We're not trying to be a contractor's yard as far as, small landscaping companies coming in, residents coming in. That's not what we're looking for. This really is a need for our business, especially at a time like this. Costs are just going up left and right, and we really need to be able to offset some of that. And we think the first way to do that is to limit how much we're having to purchase material from other people, and especially where we have the capacity to do it ourselves. So that's pretty much why we're in front of you today.
Okay. Before everybody comments, Jim, do you have anything?
No, I will agree that I didn't receive any complaints during crushing periods. As of, really the last 2 years, I don't think I've received any complaints about the trucking operation out there.
Awesome.
Okay. I'd like to turn it over to the board members. Brian?
Yeah, I've never, throughout the earlier permitting process and through to this day, I've never really heard of any complaints. I hear that the company is well run, good neighbors, and does good work. So that's, to me, is not a surprise. They have a very good reputation. I don't know what to do about this because I don't have any basis to evaluate the impacts. I don't know how loud crushing gravel is and how far away it can be heard, and maybe the fact that we don't have complaints is because we don't do it very often. You know what I mean? So I don't know how we assess that. I do know that also Farm Street is a crazy road, as we all know. And I would be generically concerned with additional traffic. I know that the asphalt engineering does a good job. They're respectful of the roads, and there's never been any complaints. And I'm sure that will continue. And to some extent, they live in the town, and the town can monitor that and govern that. But if we're inviting outside vendors onto their site to pick up material, I wonder what impact that might have with regard to companies that might not be so well managed and respectful and on that crazy road. So I don't know how, to be completely honest, I just don't know how to evaluate this without some sort of metric or something to tell us what to do.
Thank you. Dennis?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Brian to an extent. And how long does it take the client to grind 24 ton that he usually stores on site, which is his limit, I believe?
24,000 tons is the max we can store per pile. One being the finished product, the gravel, the other being the raw material, the broken asphalt. We can crush about 1,000 tons a day, roughly.
All right, so how much more material are you going to be hauling in there to crush?
Well, we can't really change the amount of material on site. It's
Right.
more of supplying our business with what's needed for our projects. And what's happening right now is on rain days, when we were rained out, we have about 13 trucks running to different locations to bring material in to supply us, because the 20 days a year isn't enough to supply us. with gravel for sub-bases of the driveways, parking lots, and roads. So there's some days we're running 13 trucks every hour down Farm Street, to Holliston and back, or to Plainville and back. So really the trucking, we don't really see the trucking increasing whatsoever. In fact, it may be less because on those rain days, we'll have pretty much no trucking needed.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just concerned that this thing could grow into something that I've seen before in town, where everybody has great intentions, and the next thing I know, we've got a massive complex going on. I don't want to see your project turn into something like that, but I'd be willing to give you some more time. I'd probably be even willing to let you, you know, we don't count the rainy days, you know what I'm saying?
But we're talking significant, like us getting an extra 40 days a month or 40 days a year is not going to be enough to supply. We have grown 80% just this year alone. And we are doing a lot more work locally, which means that we're using our own material much more frequently, obviously to save costs, right? And so we're buying it in bulk, hauling it in onto the Medway gravel pile, and then pulling from there. So our feeling is really this is a reduction in trucking because you're no longer bringing in material to then bring out. It's just the dumped material that we're already dumping there. We're just able to process it more frequently, making more material. So it's really not something, and also these machines are very expensive, right? So if we're going to invest, for example, in purchasing one, they're $600,000. You have to justify that and know, okay, we're not going to have to buy that material. Or for renting it, you really rent it for like a 2-week time period, and hope that you don't have rain. And if you do, you rent it for another week. So we feel really this is about how much material we're allowed to process. As far as the sound goes, of course, Brian, I just want to touch on that. There was a sound study done right at the beginning that answered all of those questions. I'm happy to, I know Jim has it. It was all part of the original approval. And it was established that there was zero sound impact. So, I would say that is a basis point. In addition, the fact that we haven't had a single issue when we have been doing this even for 3 weeks at a time. So this really primarily is about supplying us with the material that we need to function during a really difficult time, to offset a lot of additional costs this year, to maintain employees at additional cost. And it's really the perfect site to do this operation. I think it's proven itself to be that. I think we've proven ourselves to be very transparent and forthcoming with all of our intentions because we love it here. We want to be here forever. And I think that this is something that really has to happen for us. And we're asking for you to understand that need from a business standpoint, because it's going to be substantially financially important for us.
I have another question. Are you going to have other companies hauling in material too for you to crush for them?
Sure. So that's not our initial goal. Obviously, there are times that we're working in conjunction with other contractors. If we have a relationship with a contractor and a project nearby, we're going to have to be very specific if that were something that we entertain, because our DEP permit is very clear that we are personally responsible for any material that comes in there. So we are not gonna like, oh, you're in the area, you want to swing in. These would be like vetted relationships, with a limited few that we would work with, when they're in the area. But it wouldn't be something that we could just open up because the liability is too great regarding the DEP permit.
Let's have two more. How about in the winter time? How much actual crushing you do in the very cold weather?
Zero.
Yeah, there won't be much going on in the winter. I mean, here and there you have some nice days maybe, but it wouldn't be worth it for us to rent a machine during that time.
It's too cold, yeah. So
Yeah.
we're really talking and maybe March through maybe December, weather permitting, but the earliest like last year, for example, we crushed, I believe it was June and then November, and that was it. But we're trying to obviously, keep it in line with our business. Our business runs from middle of March until middle of December, weather permitting, every year.
Right, because I'm just wondering if you're trying to turn this into a year-round crushing operation, which I think is.
No.
No, we like to go to Florida in the winter. We're not, no, the answer is no.
Right, so how many days are you looking for? I mean, I personally, I don't want to give you carte blanche 365 and have you just have at it, because I know what's going to happen and you're just going to grow, and we're going to be monitoring this and going, wait a minute, this is out of control. But
well, I want to reiterate, we do have limitations, right? So there's several. So one is you can't crush more than 1,000 tons a day. Well, if you can't crush more than 1,000 tons a day and I can only have 24,000 tons of asphalt in my pile, you are limited. So it's not that there are no limitations, right? The days that we do it is almost irrelevant. You're more controlled by the maximum tonnage that you can have in your raw pile, the maximum tonnage you can have in your process pile, and then the fact that you can only physically do 1,000 tons a day, and that's very unlikely. You know, probably more like 800. And then you have rain days, right? So I think we're already limited by things in, for example, the piles can't change because that's what our stormwater management controls are based on. That's what our DEP permitting is based on. So that number isn't something that can ever fluctuate. It's capitalizing on every square inch we can use of that property, right? So it can never change. So I think we're saved as far as a carte blanche because simply from a math standpoint, it can't happen. So really what we're looking for would be to have the ability to crush. And we say Monday through Saturday because if you've rented a machine and it rains on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you do want to crush, give your guys work on a Saturday, right? They lost 3 days to rain, and capitalize on the fact that we have the piece of equipment. Certainly don't want to just keep losing money every day having it there. So I think what we are asking for is, you know, Monday through Friday, able to do that without a limitation on the days. I mean, if we wanted to put something in there regarding the wintertime, you know, I think that that's perfectly fine. Again, this is not something we're trying to do all winter long. So I think that the limitations are there.
well, what's your ballpark for days here then?
So initially, right, we're probably renting it 2 to 3 weeks. So I would say at a minimum 3 weeks a month, right? I really would like to see that being just, we can crush when we're able to crush, because it's a tough thing to predict with weather and everything like that. So
When do you plan on purchasing a machine?
God.
Well, we don't plan on purchasing one.
Not for a very long time.
Like Aaron said, at like $600,000, really justify owning one has to work every day.
Yeah.
So what we do is we rent them a week at a time. And that's where the Saturday comes in, because if it does rain 1 or 2 days, I'm paying that much money per week no matter what, if that machine runs or not.
Right.
So that's why the Saturday is kind of key, just in case there's a rain day where I can open that up on a Saturday and still process and not lose an incredible amount of money. So really can't crush in the rain.
Right, I understand that, but I know all I'm saying is if you made that type of an investment and bought that machine, you're going to want to go 24/7. You know what I'm saying? Just to keep the numbers on it, just to afford the machine.
Right. So I that's why I can't buy one right now. And I don't really foresee that, to be honest with you, just because we don't have that kind of volume ability to keep on that site.
Right. I'd be willing to, work with the days with you, but I'd be also wanting to put some guidelines on it.
Bill?
Yeah. My initial thoughts were coming into this that we were going to, going from 20 days and being reasonable on, doubling it or something like that. But, like Brian said, trying to understand what the ramifications are on the neighbors. I see that there is quite a few people in the crowd. I guess I'd like to hear some of the crowd, the crushing, the noise, the sound study. I'm concerned about the operation turning into a, deliver to other, do you bring it to other people in the future? Do they come to you in the future? There's some concerns there that I don't think we've walked through. I mean, if it was something strictly for your operation, I can understand. I'm uncomfortable with carte blanche on this. So I'm looking for some way to evaluate it and some way to make sure we don't get in over our heads real quickly. And I'm talking the board, not you guys. I know you guys have a great business, and I was in the crowd when you guys were going through this process, so I saw some of it. I congratulate you on your success.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. And I think, something I just kind of want to reiterate is there's nothing that's been stopping us from selling and hauling material out now. There's nothing really that's stopping us from having people show up and purchase material now. I think if that were what our goal was and our mission here, we would already be doing that. Because we're hauling in the material, we have it available, it's stored on the Medway land. There's nothing permitting wise that's saying that's not something we can do. So I think really what we're asking is to be able to make it ourselves. As far as the trucking implications and the operational aspect, that's all is what it is, right? This really is just about us being able to make our own material as opposed to having to haul it in and then use it.
Liz?
I just have a couple of questions, but I do want to mention too that I know the construction industry is kind of facing some pretty interesting times, supply chain, lack of labor, rising material costs. It's really impacting a lot of things. So we can, or at least I can certainly feel where you're coming from on that front. But so you can have 24,000 tons in a pile and you only have 2 piles at one time. How often are those piles being depleted, I guess, if I'm thinking of it correctly?
So it's kind of like they kind of grow and they shrink, right?
Sure.
But what tends to happen, am I still on?
Yep. I can hear you.
What tends to happen is we're just constantly pulling from our piles, and what happens is they shrink faster than we can replace them.
Because of the limit on the crushing days, right?
Correct. Due to the limit on the crushing days, we can only obviously crush really twice a year. So once in the summer, once in the fall, when piles get big enough, we can justify bringing the machine in and crush as much as we can in that 20-day period.
Okay. And then when you are crushing, are you doing 6:30 to 7, or is that just to buffer in like any sort of rain or poor weather for a specific day?
We're just getting prepped. Like we feel like it's better to be transparent and say we'll probably have somebody back there at 6:30. You get the machine warmed up, you get going.
Get it greased.
Yeah, get it greased and.
Okay. Those are all of my questions. I think the rest of the board had some good thoughts on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can now.
Oh, very good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, so I'm really happy to hear that things are going well with asphalt engineering and seems like you're expanding. That's great news. Happy to hear it. I just had a couple questions. So looking at your request for the amendment, it looks, so you're requesting 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Monday through Saturday, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Now, with the times that you have crushed asphalt, have you crushed as early as 6:30 a.m. and as late as 7:30 p.m.? Has it been in that window?
We may have here and there. It's obviously very rare. But for example, when something may break, because these machines have a lot of moving parts, right? So it could be down, say crushing, could go down for 4 hours, replace a part. I don't want to lose that day because what happens is on these rentals, it's an hour meter. So when that crusher is going, it's being tracked by the hour. So you have like 40 hours you own on that crusher. So if I'm down for 4 hours, I want to lose that whole day. So I got to keep going until sometimes into the evening. But obviously, we're trying to wrap up and get home by a decent time too. So I know our operation is for the business is from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we're trying to stay, within those hours.
Okay. The reason why I was asking was just because if, let's say you usually have crushed between, I don't know, like a typical workday between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., there may have been no complaints from any abutters because they haven't heard because they're at work or something. But if, you have been crushing as early as 6:30 and as late as 7:30 or 8, I guess it is good that there hasn't been any complaints. And I assume you've also crushed on the weekends. I think I heard you say Sunday.
Saturday.
Saturday. Okay, Saturday. So I guess we can assume that most people have been home from work, so any residential abutters and such. So, and then one other thing too. I did hear you bring up DEP, which I assume that that's regarding stormwater.
It's actually, so we have an RCC crushing permit. It's a recycling operation permit.
Okay. All right. Has there been anything with air quality that you had to abide by?
No.
Okay. The reason being, I don't know if you would trip it, but depending on if you crush, regularly, I know that there are air quality permits from DEP. I believe it's LPA and CPA is the terminology based on dust emissions. I don't know if you would trip it even if you were crushing, all day, every day, but it's just something to look into because that's something that, it's another regulatory not regulatory loophole, but another regulatory permit that you'd have to go through. It's just a thought. I don't know, like I said, if it would even apply in this case, but it's just something to potentially look into.
Part of our crushing permit, we are required to mist the crusher. So it basically eliminates, there's already minimal dust as it is with crushing asphalt. It's not a very dusty product. But we do mist and have a tanker there misting the entire time to prevent any types of dust whatsoever.
All right, so it's a controlled.
Yes.
We also have reached out to James McQuaid at DEP. We've let him know what our intentions are. We've told them that we're coming in front of the board today. We're working on submitting that all with them. And it's also something where they, want to make sure, obviously, that we're compliant with the town. So everything that they approve is pending, of course, that we're compliant with town bylaws. And so they do review all of that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I think that pretty much wraps up my questions. Yeah, I'll throw that back to the chair.
I've heard a few things this evening. One thing that alarmed me a little bit, and sorry to start at a negative point. You mentioned you have 13 trucks coming and going every hour?
No, so we own 13 large trucks, dump trucks. When we have rain days, for example, our paving crews, our prep crews are not working just because we can't work in the rain. So what we do is those truck drivers haul material from usually Holliston. There's American Recycled Materials is over there. And we bring in more gravel to supply us, and so we don't run out of gravel. So there's days we're running 13 trucks an hour down Farm Street, and no complaints.
Now that exceeds what you had indicated to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not our intention at all.
I understand that, but that significantly increases what you presented to us 3 years ago. Three years ago. We went through great strides with you people to mitigate everything we're talking about tonight, especially traffic, and to find that it is substantially more than what you told us you would need bothers me greatly.
I apologize. Yeah.
Significantly more.
Yeah.
We were told,
it's not regular. It's not a regular.
We can go back and look the minutes, but it was not 13 trips per hour during the day. I think you were looking significantly less than that. When I walked in this evening, I was thinking of doubling it to 40 days per year, and that doesn't seem to suit you at all. And we've also discussed the fact that if we doubled it, I was going to say that material that left your property can only be delivered in your vehicles, not other vehicles, and that you can only bring prop material in to your property in your vehicles. And it sounds like that's not being done right now.
Well, that's being done right now. We do use hired trucks because obviously there's times that we don't have our drivers and we have bigger projects. So they aren't necessarily our trucks, but they're our sub. So they're coming from our job to our facility and they're being directed by us. We don't have anybody bringing material and dumping on our property right now. It's only our company. It's only our company dumping on the property. And
but
we've
I
also
thought a few moments ago it was indicated that you could have other vendors bringing material in, and you have to be concerned what you bring in.
we were asking to do that. We were asking to do that. We were asking to do that. We were saying if that's something that we could do. That's not something we're doing now.
Something that this board, we went through great strides over a 2-year process to get to where we were on in May of 17. I want to hear from the public. I think we need to do some more legwork on this, but doubling it will not even satisfy your requirements.
I don't think it's going to solve the not having material problem. No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill, if I may make a recommendation, it's maybe the applicant could do a little bit of homework as to what that number might look like. Because what I'm hearing from the board right now is they're kind of struggling with what that limitation might be and then what the impacts may be. So perhaps the applicant could do a little bit of more just thought on how much material and how many days realistically. I mean, we're already narrowing it down to like 9 months out of the year, and then how many realistically days out of those months, and maybe there's something in between there that we could work with.
I just also the traffic concern is a big deal, and you people are very diligent in your traffic study and how you control that, and now it's a lot more traffic than initially we had been presented with. I know you mentioned 3 weeks per month. I have reservations about that greatly. As Dennis has said, and Brian, we don't want this to become another type of business overnight that just balloons into something. But I've given my comments. Jim, I want to ask a question. Right now, if a competitor of theirs, if there's nothing on that property, and Bill O'Connell Asphalt wanted to apply to put that in, could that be done right now under zoning? Or have we zoned that out of Farm Street?
I'm sorry, if on that property, if they
zoning
want
on a piece of property, if nothing was there.
If nothing was on the applicant's property?
Yes, will you be able to put something in right now?
Yeah, it's zoned industrial. They're one of the lone industrial. Oh no, that's not true. There's a couple industrial right there.
But we've reduced industrial on Farmwood over the past several years.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. So that's my concern. I'd like to hear from the public. And anyone here?
I don't believe anyone in the public's here for this one.
Okay. So, Jim, what's the next step? I think we have some homework to do.
Well, I mean, it depends on what the flavor of the board and the applicant. If the applicant thinks there is, something maybe slightly less than what the request is, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear from them. And if so, I can certainly work with the the owners and discuss that further, and they can present to you something at the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely
Solve this tonight, Jim.
Pardon?
I don't think we'll be able to solve this tonight.
Right, exactly right. I mean, if the applicant's willing to think about a little bit more about honing in on that specific number of days, then yeah, at the next meeting, I think they could certainly present that to you.
is the next meeting, so I do want to express that there is an absolute immediate need from a company perspective. So I guess my question would be, if we wanted to take this in baby steps, what would that look like from a comfort level? Is it more that we wanted to be able to have like a couple vendors or a couple contractors that we work with be able to come and buy gravel from us? Is that the bigger concern? Because I think the crushing aspect we've established really has zero impact from a proven sound study and from the past 3 years. It sounds like the bigger concern is other companies coming onto the property.
No, I don't see it that way.
No?
I know we talked about sound, but you've asked to go from 20 days to a month. That is significant. As I said earlier, I thought we could do it, and that, obviously did not address your concerns. Traffic is a concern. I know it's immediate, but we can have, ask the board members. We can't make a decision this evening. I don't think we're prepared to do that right now.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would like to hear what would be cost effective for you guys? How many days makes this worth doing for you guys? And I don't think we're going to be able to do this tonight, but I would like to hear, I heard 40 wasn't going to be enough, I'm to the point of, I don't think I would vote to be unlimited. So I'm looking to see if there's somewhere in between that is cost effective for you guys, but, it doesn't give like I said, I don't want to, I'm protecting the town as well, sir. Amen.
I think 100 days would be the number, which would be an average of about 2 weeks a month. So basically that's going to allow us to rent the machine for the 2-week period and crush, and then obviously move the material and then proceed crushing again for the 9 months of operation. So I think if that's something, if capping that were something, and if we have to, in a couple of years we come back, and I think even Bill, what you brought up with things being significantly different, we have grown substantially in 3 years, and obviously you can't predict, right? You know what your needs are at the time, and I think we tried to gauge all that, and I think we've really, really, really done a good job through that growth to still make sure that we are protecting the town and the neighbors. I think 100 days would be that sweet spot where we wouldn't have to buy the material elsewhere. I think that could really work for us. We certainly would appreciate it. Yeah, and like I said, with the sound study, the sound study is not based on the number of days, right? It's based on the operation itself within an hour time frame and what that sounds like. So if that's something you guys felt comfortable with, and just as a side note, every time that we make a change with the town, we have to then go through a several $1,000s process with DEP. So I think that our initial goal in reaching out to you guys was to kind of open it up to have the ability to grow over the next 5 to 10 years so that we didn't have to keep making that investment on the DEP side. In addition to it's costly even for this meeting, right? So our goal was to try to kind of make it as broad as possible for that hopeful, potential growth. But I think what you guys are saying is that the town wants to be more involved in what that growth looks like. And I completely understand that. I think our immediate need today, if you would allow it, would be to hit that 100-day mark. Obviously that would be spread out, right? Because the material has to amount to then deplete. I don't know if that's something you guys would entertain today, but we certainly would appreciate that.
Bottom line, if we don't make a decision tonight, what are the ramifications for you?
I'm sorry, can you say that?
If we do not make a decision this evening?
We're basically just hauling in more material from outside sources, and obviously additional costs for us until we have an agreement.
I feel this process is being a little rushed this evening. one thing that concerned me is on one hand, you asked for 100 days and you want to come back down the road and expand that. If we
Not
do,
necessarily.
it's almost permanent with this board.
I missed that. I apologize. I missed the end of that.
If we do 2 weeks a month, it will be long-term. 2 weeks per month, 100 days. This will be revisited. We're only 3 years in, and you're asking us to more than double it.
Okay.
Correct.
We were very careful and went through a lot of processes
Yes.
to get you into that facility. And now within 3 years, you want us to significantly increase your what was presented to us,
right,
which impacts traffic. And just, it's concerning to me. I feel like right now, we have a gun to our head on, 100 days tonight or,
No.
Well, you just said,
Nate and Aaron, you have an ability, right? So you have the 20 days still this year available to you. So you could, between now and the next meeting, utilize part of that or all of that 20 days. And
Absolutely correct.
because it sounds like, the board is needing a little bit more time to make that decision.
Sure. And this was really more about us. Obviously, any good business is not planning for tomorrow. They're planning for 6 months down the line. And clearly from a budgeting perspective, if we're preparing to spend $2.50 a ton to make material or 10 plus tax, $12 a ton, that's why there's a sense of urgency from my perspective. I'm just trying to plan and, protect the company too.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. That's all. And I think 100 days, if what you're saying is that's what the town's comfortable with from a long-term perspective, I believe
we'll get there in June.
Yeah.
That would be the maximum amount. And again, that's up for discussion, but I don't see us going beyond, unless we find something alarming between now and then, going beyond 100 days.
Okay.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
To the clients. Do you have a portable waste station on site?
No, we our loader has a scale in it. So like I'm assuming going towards weight. So when we load our own trucks, we have the ability to reset a scale and use the scale in the loader to track our material.
So that's how, even if you would say you were processing it and selling it to other vendors, that's how you would sell it? With the loader as your scale?
If we're going to, yes, correct.
I didn't know what stipulation you would be required to as a business. That's all I'm wondering. Because I know if I go to Rentham Sand and Gravel, I'm going to scale. I'm not going on any loader.
Right.
Correct. So, yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Nathan, what do you do in the September, October after dusk?
Well, once it's dark, we're done. Once daylight savings kind of comes into play, it really kind of it's a challenge for our business because that's our busiest time of year is basically September through December. So we're obviously limited to daylight. So as soon as daylight ends, we're done.
Okay.
Bill, if I could just
can look at between now and the next meeting are putting in a cap on the daylight, as you said, but also trying to figure a way within those, whatever the numbers we agree on, taking consideration the rain days and see how we can manage that the best, meet your needs. Yeah, we can try to work through that, but unfortunately, we can't work with people you fit the machine from.
Right. And no,
I mean, we want to be cognizant of that.
Right.
The next meeting is actually May 27th. If you think that's a reasonable amount of time to analyze and get back to the board could continue to that date, perhaps.
Yes.
Bill, if I could, I don't want to make assumptions either way about whether it is impactful or not impactful. I don't want to create problems. where there are none. So the only way that we can figure that out is with some sort of basis to determine that. And I don't know what that is, you know. To your previous point, Bill, is that we did spend a lot of time looking at this operation. And when we were permitting, the neighbors did come out and they raised concerns. And I think that we, you know, limited the actual amount of crushing, you know, back then because of the potential for a better impacts. And, you know, I don't know if that is working, if that arrangement is working, and that's why we don't have the impacts, or if it's just not impactful. So I think that if, you know, I do agree that we do need more time, I think, to flesh this out and think it through. But it coming back without any sort of quantifiable data to look at and say, here it is. And I'm not talking about a 4-year-old sound study. I'm talking about, you know, this is the number of trucks, this is the number of trips, this is the number of vendors, this is how it's going to play out, this is the decibels, this is the duration, these are the hours. You know, I think it's going to be difficult for us to make any sort of conclusion. And I think that if we have to speculate, and I don't want to speculate making these decisions, we have to be conservative for the reasons that Dennis pointed out, and for that, because I think it's great that the business is thriving and is doing well, but we have to be careful with the impacts, and there's nothing more stressful, I think, in someone's lives if they don't have their home is stressful to them in terms of they can't open their windows during the day. You know, they can't go out and hang out in their yard. If on Saturday is the day that they're finally home, and then they have to listen to a crushing operation next door. And I don't know if any of the things that I'm saying is actually happening. And maybe it's not. But that's what I think concerned us all, because no one on the board would want to live next to a crushing operation. And I don't think you would want to live near your operation either. So that's where we're coming from. So help us solve that mystery, and I think then we can have a much more productive meeting.
Sure, sounds good. I mean, just referring back to, I was sort of industrial area, so I really don't have many, you know, neighbors that are residential. Obviously, there's neighbors on Farm Street for the trucking aspect. And just to go back to the trucking, when I mentioned the 13 trucks in a single day every hour, that was just referring to the rain days when we're bringing material to supplement
when we run out
our issue here. So we're just trying to keep up with it. So obviously, if we have the ability to crush, there's no need to run those kinds of trucks on a rain day, eliminating less trucking, obviously. So I just want to kind of refer back to that, just to be very clear where we're coming from with that information.
Thank you.
But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Very much.
And Jim, there's no one in the public, correct?
That's correct.
Do we need a motion to continue this to the next meeting?
Yes, please. May 27th?
Is the next meeting enough time for
Yes.
all parties involved?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Updated sound information, or?
What's that, Bill?
Be able to get some updated, Brian, you want some more sound information?
I don't know, just something to evaluate. I don't want, you know, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I really don't. I don't know what the answer is here. But I just don't want to speculate. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Oh, can I just say something quick? I think regardless, you know, I agree with Brian that, you know, we need a little bit more understanding of what the impacts will be, but I think more specificity about the new proposed operation. Like, you know, we didn't know that you don't operate in the winter, and that maybe, you know, dusk you don't work. I think next time coming with that specificity would really help. give us
Okay.
a better understanding. And then obviously the impacts that Brian's talking about, how do we figure that out? But I think really kind of narrowing down, if you can, even though it sounds like your business is hard to fit into a box because it depends on the weather and all sorts of other things. But I think giving the board a bit more clarity on these are the months we work, et cetera, would be helpful.
Okay, absolutely.
So there was a first. Bill, you're
That's
muted.
Jim's way of saying needs a second.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 I assume we've done with discussion. Anyone abstaining or saying no? Unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds
good. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Jim, what else do we have?
All right, so we're gonna blow through a couple of these A&Rs real quick. I'm gonna pull them up on the screen and walk you through it if that's all right. Let's see, it's coming here just a second. So the first one's in our Dropbox there. It's the Mechanic Street one. So what's going on here? And let's see if I can get you a little better view. So what's going on here is that Mechanic Street, this is where the new apartments are going. If you guys are familiar with Mechanic Street, this is the right of way when you're gonna go into PJs and Urban Air and all that good stuff. Right here is where Mass Diesel used to be and Barrett's used to be. And what's going on is they're taking a strip of this land and consolidating into this lot here. And so basically it essentially reorganizes these lots to make it more suitable for future development. And it meets all of our requirements and all that. It essentially allows for the apartments to no longer have this kind of entrance, which was never contemplated in the first place. Puts it over here, allows for one holistic lot and another kind of holistic lot here for future pad site or something. But nothing proposed at this time, just an A&R.
Any more members have any questions? Jim, your recommendation is to sign this?
Yes, please.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of signing the Blackstone, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Mechanic
that was
Street-
the Mechanic Street one.
Mechanic
Yep.
Street A&R, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
All right, excellent. The next one here is Blackstone and North Street. I do see the applicants on. I don't want to steal their thunder if they want to chime in, but essentially this plan was signed by the board a few years back. They have modified the lot lines slightly, and that's the gist of this plan. It again meets all the criteria. This is agricultural zone, so it's larger lots and larger frontage, but still single family lots, still the 4 lots that were contemplated before, just adjusting lot lines. And I would recommend to sign that one as well if the board chooses.
Moved. Well, I'll move to sign the A&Rs.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of signing the A&R as described, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
All right.
passes unanimously.
Excellent. So the last one here, it doesn't look like it's going to let me pull it up.
Jim, you gotta download it. Just download it and it'll upload.
Okay, got it.
Excuse
Thanks,
me, ladies and gentlemen, for a minute.
Yep. Download. Okay. Oh, I see what's going on. Okay. So yes, so this one just came in. And the reason I'm bringing it to you all, this one's kind of hard. Let's see, can I zoom out at all on this? Well, I'll scroll through it. So let me get you oriented. So this is Lake Street.
So Jim, we can't see it, just so you know.
Oh, you can't see it all. You know what? I'm gonna stop and come back.
At least I couldn't see it.
Let's see. How about that? All right,
Yep.
cool. Excellent. So what's going on here is Lake Street is here. Oh, actually, Lake Street goes into Prospect Street in Franklin. So you guys might be familiar with that area, this Prospect Street, as you'll see it, and then it turns to back onto Lake Street here into Bellingham. So this is, you see Bellingham here, Franklin here, town line. Lots of little lots here. Well, not lots. There's seven total lots and 6 single-family lots. This is agriculturally zoned here in Bellingham. So, you know, so that's 2-acre zoning with larger frontage. And what's going on here is that they meet the Franklin zoning, the frontage and lot area, but they do not meet the lot area for Bellingham. In addition, these lots are almost wholly in Franklin, so this is what's deemed passive lot area in Bellingham. And in talking with our town council, you know, there's several case laws out there that explain that you know, this is essentially unimportant for Bellingham, and should be signed by Franklin if they meet all the regulations, which they have, you noted here, even though they signed in the wrong spot, and not signed by Bellingham. I explained this to the applicant. The applicant decided to submit anyways. So they do not meet the lot area, and in turn, I recommend denying this one.
Is the applicant here this evening?
It doesn't appear that he's on.
Jim, the action of denying, what is it put into play?
Well, it just simply it stops the constructive approval process. So an A&R is supposed to be an approval not required. So essentially, you know, the planning board gets to review this plan, and if it meets all your bylaws, lot area, frontage, and has adequate access, you're basically required to sign the plan. This doesn't meet it, and if we take no action in 21 days, it gets constructively approved. So my recommendation would be to deny so that doesn't occur.
I'll move to deny the A&R.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion fails. Denied, excuse me. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
So we are denying the A&R.
And then the last thing, we can, if it's okay, we can pick up the minutes next time.
Jim, we also need to reorganize.
That would be the last thing I have for you.
We need to elect a chairman and vice chairman.
Can I make a nomination?
You certainly can.
I nominate William O'Connor for chair.
I'd like to second it.
There's a motion on the floor to nominate me as chair. It has been seconded. Any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, seeing none. I'm sorry, I feel awkward calling for a vote for my own chairmanship. Can someone else do that, please?
Hearing none, seeing one. Take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, hello, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Vice Chairman. I'd like to nominate Brian as Vice Chair. You'll accept?
I'll accept but if anyone else wants a shot at it, that's fine too. But I'm happy to do it.
Don't all step forward at once.
I'd like to second Brian.
Yeah, but Brian, we're going to nominate you as treasurer. But we don't have a treasurer, do we?
No.
There's a
Not yet.
motion on the floor. It has
I want to be
seconded.
I would like
Go
to
ahead.
be the ambassador of Franklin, if you don't mind.
And that's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
And probably above our stipend too. There's a motion on the floor to nominate Brian as chair. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Yeah, that's all I got for you tonight, guys.
Jim, do we need to sign anything quickly?
If you have an opportunity to come in tomorrow morning for A&Rs, Amy will be around. I'm actually out tomorrow, but Amy will be around for most of the morning. And then if tomorrow doesn't work for you and you can swing by Monday, that works too. We just need to get those A&Rs signed and stamped in.
If we try to get down either tomorrow or Monday, it'd be greatly appreciated. Also, I want to thank the board members. This was probably one of the longest meetings we've had in a long time. I think it was very productive. I think I'm already seeing feedback as well as some of you are, that it was very productive via Zoom. So last thing, Vice Chair, you want to call for a motion to adjourn and your tagline?
Yeah. Can you see me? My picture looks like it's frozen.
No, you're not frozen. We can see you.
Oh, lucky you. I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Second.
Good night,
All in
Bellingham.
favor, please signify by saying aye.
Have a great
Aye.
night.
Aye.
Go ahead, Brian.